Russia breaking news, brand new Yandex investors from the Kremlin. Putin's domestic policy czar wants to broker a deal that would increase the government's monopoly on Russia's tech sector. Journalists from Meduza and The Bell have learned that Sergei Kiriyenko, the first deputy chief of staff in the Kremlin and the man in charge of domestic policy, is advocating a new plan to sell off tech giant Yandex's remaining Russian assets. Under Kiriyenko's proposal, the companies would be sold to a group of investors with ties to Yuri Kovalchuk, the billionaire dubbed Vladimir Putin's personal banker, further solidifying Kovalchuk's grip on the reins of the Russian internet and increasing the Kremlin's sway over the sector. Even though Vladimir Putin approved the list of buyers, the future of the Yandex deal became uncertain last month when the company's board of directors opposed selling off the assets to individuals under Western sanctions. The Bell has learned from a source familiar with the negotiations and two others close to Yandex's founder Arkady Volozh that Lukoil's founder, Vagit Alekperov, backed out of the deal due to concerns that his participation would result in new international sanctions. Alekperov is a reasonable compromise buyer for both the Kremlin and the foreign members of Yandex's board of directors because he is already sanctioned in the UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand but crucially not in the US or EU. According to Meduza and The Bell's sources, about a month ago, Yandex's corporate development advisor and former government official Alexei Kudrin was presented with a list of new potential buyers compiled by Sergei Kiriyenko. Kiriyenko named Ivan Tavrin, the former head of Megaphone, the owner of Kismet Capital Group, Alexei Nechayev, the founder of cosmetics company Faberlic and the head of the New People political party, and Yuri Shamalov, whose father is one of Putin's oldest friends and whose brother was once Putin's son-in-law, the manager of the Russian Direct Investment Fund or the Gazprom pension fund Gazfond. A source told Meduza and The Bell that Tavrin would be the best option because he would provide the Yandex board with a clean candidate who is not under Western sanctions and provide the Kremlin with an investor whose loyalty it can trust. But according to a person close to Tavrin, the businessman hasn't had any formal talks with the shareholders or executives of Yandex just yet. Where does Kovalchuk come into play here? In any case, Kiriyenko's potential buyers wouldn't be the ultimate ones to take over Yandex. Two people with knowledge of the negotiations have said that potential buyers will be asked to transfer their shares at a later date. Yuri Kovalchuk is seen as the deal's most likely beneficiary after he previously expressed interest in Yandex but ultimately decided to pass. Kovalchuk's business empire already owns another major IT company in Russia, VK, Vkontakte, in addition to Gazprom Media. The Kiriyenko family benefited greatly from this purchase. After purchasing VK from Alisher Usmanov in 2021, they placed Sergei Kiriyenko's son, Vladimir, in charge of the company. Kiriyenko's new list features only friends and family members of his and Kovalchuk. An informed source told Meduza that Tavrin is interested in any asset he can turn around and sell for a profit, regardless of to whom he sells it. This source noted that Tavrin has prior experience selling businesses to Kovalchuk and competing in bids similar to the situation with Yandex. A media conglomerate that already included Channel 5, Ren TV, Izvestia, film and TV studios, and half of Channel 1 was expanded 5 years ago when Tavrin and Alisher Usmanov sold STS Media to Kovalchuk's National Media Group. Tavrin made an even bigger deal last year when he acquired Avida, Russia's largest classified ads website, from VK for 151 billion rubles, $1.7 billion. More than a dozen companies submitted bids for Avida to Naspers, a company based in South Africa. VK was considered the front-runner for the sale, as it made the highest and most competitive bid and had the backing of the Kremlin. According to a source close to the negotiations, it was made clear to us that there was no need to haggle over Avida because the asset was earmarked for the right suitor, meaning VK. But Naspers was getting out of Russia and wouldn't even sell Avida to the right suitor, because of VK's ties to the government and the fact that its CEO, Vladimir Kiriyenko, is under Western sanctions. Even though Avida sold to Tavrin, those in the know say he will eventually resell to VK. Tavrin refutes these claims, and his agreement with Naspers prohibits him from reselling the business for a set period of time. Alexei Nechav's inclusion among Kiriyenko's top picks comes as the biggest surprise, but he actually does make sense given the overall trend. Even though Nechav is subject to a number of Western sanctions, a business controlled by his family may still make an offer for Yandex's Russian holdings. Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin reportedly urged New People Party leader Sergei Nechav to invest in Yandex, according to a source quoted by Meduza. Both men's representatives were unavailable for comment. Journalists at Kommersant attributed the New People Party's 2021 electoral success to the Kremlin's administrative resources. The party was able to win enough votes to enter the State Duma. Media outlet Meduza has also covered the party's ties to the Putin government and the Kovalchuk brothers. Nechav disputes the notion that his party is a Kremlin project. What follows, and concludes, senior management at Yandex, including Arkady Volozh, reportedly hoped that Alexei Kudrin, who has close ties to Vladimir Putin, would coordinate the sale of the company's Russian assets. Executives reportedly had faith that Kudrin's long relationship with the president would allow him to keep the businesses he sold at least partially autonomous from the government. One insider claimed that Sergei Kiriyenko's ability to lobby the president has been more effective than that of any other politicians because of the frequency with which he meets with the president. Kiriyenko has been trying to steer Yandex towards selling to individuals tied to Yuri Kovalchuk, much like the VK deal 2 years ago, as part of the Kremlin's grand strategy of consolidating the Runet in the hands of loyal businessmen. According to another source cited by Meduza and The Bell, Kovalchuk's nephew Stepan is being considered for the role of CEO at VK. Since VK's CEO and several other top executives abruptly left the company earlier this month, Stepan Kovalchuk is in a strong position to be promoted from his position as Senior Vice President for Media Strategy and Services Development, which he assumed in February 2022. VK, incidentally, purchased Yandex's 2 primary media properties, News and Zen, in the early spring of 2022. According to 3 sources with knowledge of the negotiations, the final details of the Yandex deal are still unclear. Any final arrangement must go back to President Putin for his stamp of approval. Yandex employees reportedly worry about a takeover as Kiriyenko brings in potential buyers from the Kovalchuk group. A source close to Yandex's management has said, right now, employees don't really think the sale will go ahead at all. Many of them are treating the nationalization that was promised as a very real possibility.